2020 NBA playoffs have been nothing like we've ever seen before. There were no fans, there was no home court advantage, and the players arrived in the Orlando bubble after an unprecedented 3-month break from the regular season. Still, those who think the 2020 playoffs deserve an asterisk are wrong. Nobody chose this. Nobody wanted to be away from their families and tested every day. And most importantly, everybody was in the same boat, which means no team or player gained an advantage. In these specific conditions, we saw some phenomenal basketball performances and the emergence of new NBA superstars. Here are the 10 best players from the 2020 NBA playoffs. Number 10. Jayson Tatum. Before we get into the list, there are some players who didn't make the cut, but because of their amazing play, we had to give them a shout-out and an honorable mention. The first one is Chris Paul, who proved once again that he's one of the best leaders in the NBA and one of the best point guards who ever played. The second one is Dame Lillard, who did all the amazing Dame Lillard things that he does, creating havoc with his ball handling and bombs deep behind the line. Then there's Goran Dragic, who has been Miami's leading scorer on the road to the finals, and whose injury will be the biggest what-if from the 2020 playoffs. And lastly, we didn't include Kawhi Leonard on the list, who played like an MVP-type player for much of the playoffs, but we decided to keep him off due to a lackluster, disappointing finish, where he failed to impose his will and looked deflated in the loss to the Nuggets. Okay, now that we gave all the needed shoutouts, let's talk about Jayson Tatum, who's only 22, who made an enormous leap this year and has emerged as an All-NBA performer. In the playoffs, he was even better than the regular season and averaged 25.7 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game in 3 playoff rounds. Tatum finally realized that he has a mismatch against most players, whether in strength, height, or speed, and started using it. He is much more decisive when he has the ball and shoots it a lot better as a result. He also improved finishing around the rim, his defense, and proved that he's going to become a top 10 player in the league, maybe as early as next season. Number 9. James Harden. James Harden has played the best basketball of his career in 2020, but this narrative got stifled due to the failure of Houston's ultra-small ball against the Lakers. Lack of playoff success will still haunt James Harden, but unlike some other times in the past, this one is clearly not on him. His defense, the biggest faux pas of his career, has been greatly improved this season, and we could see Harden guard and scramble like never before. His newfound effort on the defensive end was highlighted with the series-winning block in Game 7 of the first round. Of course, Harden's value will always be greater on offense. In the playoffs, Harden scored 29.6 points per game on a career-high 64% true shooting, along with 5.6 rebounds and 7.7 assists. But it still wasn't enough, and there should be a big turmoil in Houston to give this man a new chance for the title. Number 8. Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell was the best scorer in the 2020 playoffs, averaging 36.3 points in 7 thrilling games against the Denver Nuggets. Even though his team didn't advance, Mitchell had a series for the ages. His 57 points in Game 1 was the 3rd best scoring output ever in the playoffs, and he became the first player to score 50 twice in a playoff series. Although Mitchell's numbers are largely due to a porous Denver defense, which at times looked like Swiss cheese, 2 50-piece games should not be underestimated, especially when we remember how helpless Mitchell looked in last year's playoffs, where the Houston Rockets limited him to 32% shooting. Mitchell came into the season ready to get rid of the label of an inefficient ball hawk. He became a 3-level scorer and a very good playmaker, averaging 5 assists per game in the series against the Nuggets. He learned to shift gears and not go 100 miles per hour all the time, which keeps defenses second-guessing. The game slowed down for him, and Donovan is going to be a big problem in years to come, and I'm sure these are not his last 50-point playoff games. Number 7. Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo is Anthony Davis light, or a Draymond Green who could score. He's a little bit shorter than Davis, and he doesn't have the same pterodactyl wingspan. He's also not as good of a ball handler, and can't hit the mid-range shot as consistently as AD. However, this 23-year-old center showed many similarities to Davis, and proved that he's going to become a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate in the next decade. He is extremely mobile, and can successfully guard bigs and guards, which makes him switchable to all 5 opposing players. He was the key to Miami's defense in the playoffs, and his spectacular game-winning block on Jayson Tatum was one of the best rejections in NBA history. On offense, he is equally versatile, and Spoelstra used him as a finisher, screener, and a passer. Bam averaged 17.8 points, 10.4 rebounds, and 4.4 assists in the playoffs, on an excellent 56% shooting and 78% from the free throw line. Considering this was only his third season and that he's an extremely hard worker, we can expect big things from Adebayo in the future. Number 6 and number 5, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray were such a fun duo, and they played so well together in these playoffs that we couldn't list them separately. Jokic finished the playoffs with 24.4 points, 9.8 boards, and 5.7 assists on average, on a phenomenal 52% shooting and 43% from deep. And he did it with such pizzazz that only he can deliver. I honestly think he's the best passing big man ever. Both the eye test and the advanced stats would confirm this. He proved it once again in the playoffs, and he fed his teammates and unlocked opposing defenses as very few players can. But we were already accustomed to his passing. What we didn't expect is his scoring to pick up, making him even more dangerous offensively. He even improved his defense and was in good enough shape to play 40 minutes per game. Jokic is nominally the best player on the Nuggets, but saying Jamal Murray is their second option would be neither accurate nor fair, at least not in these playoffs. It was Murray who saved the Nuggets against the Jazz in games in which he scored 36, 50, 42, and 50 points, becoming the second player after Mitchell to drop 50 twice in a series. Not so long ago, Murray's contract seemed like a massive overpay, and now it almost looks like a bargain. Jamal was the Nuggets' leading scorer with 26.5 points and leading passer with 6.6 assists in 19 playoff games. As many as 67% of all points Murray scored in the playoffs were not assisted, and when it was the hardest and most important, Murray managed to prove himself as an efficient scorer who can punish defenses from any position on the floor. Other than Steph Curry, there hasn't been a point guard who shot better during the course of one NBA playoffs. Jamal Murray has arrived, and with him and Jokic, the Nuggets will be a perennial contender in the next decade. Number 4, Luka Doncic. I know he lost in the first round, and that there were players like Murray who sustained their excellence in multiple series, and who had even better numbers in the first round, like Donovan Mitchell. But I had to put Doncic this high, because when he did play, everybody was running out of superlatives to describe this guy. Doncic is a second-year player who nearly averaged a 30-point triple-double in the regular season, which is mind-boggling in itself. Everybody doubted that he could sustain this kind of production in the playoffs, and he did not only do that, he improved on it. Luka averaged 31 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 8.7 assists, and he did it on 60% true shooting percentage, 2% better than in the regular season. He did all that on a bad ankle, without Kristaps Porzingis on the team, and against Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, the top 5 defensive team in the league. Luka played maybe the best game anyone has played in the playoffs, scoring 43 points with 17 rebounds and 13 assists, with a crazy step-back game winner that will be an NBA highlight for years to come. Number 3, Jimmy Butler. All hail Jimmy Butler, his impeccable leadership, and his stellar play. I don't know if you can call yourself a basketball fan and not appreciate what Jimmy did in the 2020 NBA playoffs. Butler was the heart, the soul, the muscle, and the bones of one of the biggest surprises of the year, Miami Heat, who became just the 4th, 5th seed or lower team to reach the NBA Finals. Jimmy really did everything for the Heat. He was the primary creator when Dragic got hurt. He scored when nobody else could, and he played nail-biting defense. Games 3 and 5 are some of the best games anybody has ever played in the NBA Finals. He became only the 3rd player in Finals history to have a triple-double with 40 points alongside LeBron and Jerry West. But even more impressive than the numbers was how he led the game on both sides of the floor, how he lifted his teammates when they were not doing well, and how aggressive he was. Even though he lost in the finals, his numbers looked out of this world, and he averaged 26, 8, and 10 against LeBron and AD on 55% shooting. He didn't win a ring, but he became a people's champion. Number 2, Anthony Davis. In New Orleans, AD was like that dragon in the 7th part of Harry Potter. We all knew he was powerful and dangerous, but the shackles of injuries and bad GM decisions kept him stuck to the ground, and he won just 1 series and only 2 playoff appearances. The Lakers and LeBron James have released him from those shackles and enabled him to spread out his 7'6" wingspan and fly to freedom. This season, Davis proved what kind of a monster he really is. He averaged 28 and 10 on 57% shooting in the playoffs. But it wasn't just about the raw numbers. What sticks out is the mind-boggling efficiency from all areas on the floor, and his true shooting percentage throughout the playoffs was 67%, which is an all-time great number. I haven't seen a big man shoot that many jumpers with such precision since Dirk in 2011. In the 2020 playoffs, AD was a hybrid of Nowitzki's shooting, Amari Stoudemire's athleticism and finishing at the rim, and Kevin Garnett's defense. We've seen Davis absolutely bully smaller defenders and shoot over them like they're not even there. And that game winner against the Nuggets was one of the biggest shots for the Lakers in this millennium. By calling Davis a unicorn would be an understatement, because in a league full of unicorns, he's in a class of his own. Nobody other than him combines the height and length of a center, the speed and athleticism of a forward, and the ball handling and shooting touch of a guard. We've put him at the number 2 spot on this list, even though he was the Lakers' leading scorer and best defensive player in the playoffs, and it was on his wings that the Lakers reached the promised land. However, it was that magician who unleashed him, and who is still the best wizard of the basketball world at the number 1 spot, and his name is not Harry Potter. Number 1. LeBron James. Even though he lost a quarter of a step and visibly isn't Miami LeBron physically, the King is playing the smartest basketball of his career. By playing his 10th NBA Finals, LeBron's rewriting history books, and he became the first player to win Finals MVP with 3 different teams. He wasn't as dominant as his best versions from 2013 or 2016, but even this non-dominant LeBron averaged 27, 11, and 9, with 56% from the field throughout the playoffs. LeBron is still the scariest person in the NBA to see at the other end of the court for the opposing players. And his greatness is even more pronounced when we take in the fact this man will be 36 years old in a couple of months. LeBron led the Lakers with his perfect positioning, his control of the pace, and his surgical passing. The King also mercilessly scored at the rim, got to the free throw line, and played excellent defense. Sure, he did let Anthony Davis carry the scoring load at times, and let him guard the best opposing players more than he did, which is not at all surprising. Davis is younger, more athletic, he's better defensively, and if we're totally honest, in a vacuum, he's arguably a better player than LeBron James. However, despite Davis's brilliance, LeBron James has been the MVP for the Lakers this season. He's their leader, their brain, and he deservedly won the Finals MVP trophy. When it counted the most, LeBron delivered. When he needed to shut down Jamal Murray, he played exceptional defense on the Nuggets' best player. When he needed to score 40, he did just that in the finals on a crazy 15 of 21 shooting. LeBron James is still the best player in the world, and he keeps the GOAT conversation livelier than ever.